Consistency unlocks results. The skill that quietly changes everything. Authored and narrated by Thoren Asvendraken. Before we begin, let's clear something important. This is not motivation. You don't need to push harder. You don't need to hype yourself up or force change. What you're listening to works differently. This is about consistency as a lived skill. Most people don't quit because they fail. They quit because they destabilize. They start with urgency. They rely on pressure. They hold themselves together with effort. And eventually the system collapses. Not because something is wrong with them, but because force doesn't work long term. Force creates spikes. Consistency requires stability. Real consistency isn't hustle. It isn't pressure. It isn't pushing through resistance. Consistency is the ability to stay, calmly, repeatedly, without internal conflict. When your nervous system feels safe, you don't need motivation. Showing up becomes natural. Following through becomes easier. Results stop feeling like something you have to chase. This audiobook is designed to help you stabilize first, so consistency can actually hold. Before we continue, pause for a moment. Notice your body. Notice your breath. Notice if anything has softened, even slightly. And if you feel that settling, I invite you to mark it. Wherever you're listening, leave a comment with this simple, 3-word first-person affirmation. I stay present. No explanation. Just a quiet signal to yourself. You can relax here. Nothing is being forced. Nothing is being demanded. Just stay with the listening. That's where consistency begins. Let's continue. Chapter 1. Consistency is not effort. Most people misunderstand consistency. They think it means pushing through resistance. They think it means discipline, pressure, or forcing themselves to act no matter how they feel. But that definition is exactly why consistency breaks. Because effort can be applied in bursts, but it cannot be sustained as a way of life. Effort relies on spikes of energy. Consistency relies on stability. And stability is not a personality trait. It's a nervous system state. This is where most people quietly lose momentum. Not because they aren't capable, not because they aren't talented, but because they try to build long-term results on short-term force. They treat consistency like a command instead of a capacity. Force sounds like this. I should be doing more. I need to push harder. If I slow down, I'll fall behind. That voice can create action for a while, but it always comes with tension. And tension is expensive. It drains energy. It shortens patience. It turns progress into pressure. Pressure doesn't compound. It collapses. Real consistency feels different. It's quieter. It's steadier. It's less dramatic. Consistency is not about how much you can endure today. It's about how calmly you can return tomorrow. When consistency is effort-based, you burn out. When consistency is stability-based, results accumulate. This is why some people appear to move forward effortlessly. They're not more motivated. They're not stronger-willed. They're more regulated. Their system isn't fighting itself. They don't need to convince themselves to show up. They don't negotiate with their emotions every morning. They don't rely on excitement to begin. They stay, and staying is a skill. Staying when progress feels invisible. Staying when no one is watching. Staying when it's quiet and unrewarding. Most people quit, not because they failed, but because their system destabilized. They pushed too hard. They demanded too much. They treated consistency like pressure instead of practice. And eventually the body says no. This is important to understand. If consistency feels heavy, if it feels tight, if it feels like something you have to force, it won't last. Not because you're weak, but because your system is protecting you. Consistency that works feels safe. It feels like something you can repeat without bracing. It feels like movement without urgency. It feels like forward motion that doesn't cost your peace. Before we go further, pause here. Notice how you've been defining consistency until now. Has it felt exhausting? Has it come with guilt when you rest? Has it felt like pressure instead of support? If you can see that pattern, mark a new one now. Wherever you're listening, leave a comment with this simple 3-word, first-person affirmation. Don't stay steady. Not as motivation, as permission. Now let's continue. When consistency is steady, something subtle but powerful happens. You stop starting over. You stop swinging between extremes. All in, then burned out. Focused, then overwhelmed. Committed, then disconnected. Instead, your effort smooths out. You take smaller actions. You miss fewer days. You recover faster when you pause. This isn't laziness. It's intelligence. Because consistency isn't built on how much you do. It's built on how little resistance you create. The less you fight yourself, the more reliable you become. And reliability is what produces results. This is why consistency unlocks results even when progress feels slow. Because slow, stable movement compounds. And force does not. Force exhausts the system. Stability trains it. And a trained system doesn't need motivation, it needs rhythm. In the chapters ahead, we'll explore why people quit right before momentum appears, how urgency sabotages follow-through, and how to build consistency that feels calm instead of costly. But for now, let this land. You don't need to work harder to be consistent. You need to make consistency safer. When your system feels safe, showing up becomes natural. And when showing up becomes natural, results stop being something you chase. They become something you allow. Let's continue. Chapter 2. Why most people quit right before results appear. Most people don't quit at the beginning. They quit after they've already done enough for something to start working. This is the part no one prepares you for. At first, effort feels exciting. There's momentum. There's novelty. There's the sense of I'm finally doing it. But then something shifts. The excitement fades. The feedback slows. The results don't arrive on schedule. And suddenly the work feels heavier. Not because it is harder, but because the nervous system no longer has immediate reward to lean on. This is the danger zone. Not because you're failing, but because you're transitioning. Most people interpret this phase incorrectly. They think, nothing is happening. This isn't working. Maybe I chose the wrong thing. But what's actually happening is stabilization. Your system is being asked to stay without stimulation. And for many people, that's unfamiliar territory. We're trained to respond to urgency, praise, pressure, or payoff. When those disappear, the body looks for an exit. This is why people quit right before results appear. Not because the path is wrong, but because the nervous system hasn't learned how to remain steady in neutrality. Neutrality feels like nothing is happening. But neutrality is where foundations lock in. Results don't appear during emotional highs. They appear after repetition has had time to settle. This is where consistency becomes uncomfortable for the wrong reasons. Not exhausting. Not overwhelming, just quiet. And quiet can feel unsafe if you're used to intensity, so the system creates reasons to stop. Distraction, doubt, sudden better ideas, the urge to reset, restart or reinvent. This isn't intuition pulling you away. It's instability trying to restore familiarity. Familiarity often looks like chaos. This is an important reframe. When progress feels boring, dull, or uneventful, you are often closer than you think. Because systems change before outcomes do. Your behavior stabilizes first. Your identity follows. Results arrive last. Most people abandon the process during the identity phase. They don't yet feel like the person who gets the result. So they assume the result isn't coming. But identity always lags behavior. Always. If you can stay through this phase, something powerful happens. Your system stops checking for proof. You stop scanning for reassurance. You stop asking, is this working? You just continue. And continuation is what unlocks momentum. Before we go further, pause here. Think about something you stopped. Not because it failed, but because it went quiet. If you can recognize that pattern, leave a 3-word first-person affirmation wherever you're listening. Something simple, something stabilizing. For example, I stay through quiet. No explanation. No pressure. Just a signal. Now let's continue. When you learn to stay through neutrality, you gain an advantage most people never develop. You stop needing emotional fuel to move forward. You don't rely on excitement. You don't wait for motivation. You don't require constant confirmation. You operate from rhythm instead of reaction. This is where consistency becomes self-reinforcing. Each small action reduces resistance. Each return builds trust. Each steady day trains reliability. And reliability compounds. Not loudly, not dramatically, but inevitably. This is why consistency unlocks results. Not because you do more, but because you stop interrupting the process. You let time work. You let repetition settle. You let identity catch up. Quitting feels relieving in the moment, but staying builds capacity. Capacity to hold progress. Capacity to receive outcomes. Capacity to remain calm when things finally move. In the next chapter, we'll explore how urgency quietly destroys consistency, and why slowing down actually accelerates results. Continue listening. Chapter 3. Urgency is the enemy of consistency. Urgency feels productive. It feels like movement. It feels like commitment. It feels like, I'm finally taking this seriously. But urgency is not a power state. It's a stress response. Urgency compresses perception. It narrows your focus. It pulls your attention into immediate relief instead of long-term direction. When urgency is present, the body is not choosing. It's reacting. This is why urgency quietly destroys consistency. Not all at once, not dramatically, but gradually through burnout, impatience, and emotional whiplash. Most people don't quit because they're lazy. They quit because they sprint when the process requires a walk. Urgency creates unrealistic pacing. You expect visible results too soon. You overinvest energy early. You attach your emotional state to short-term feedback. And when reality doesn't match that pace, the nervous system crashes. This is where consistency breaks. Not because you don't care, but because you cared with tension. Here's the truth most people miss. Consistency does not come from intensity. It comes from sustainability. And sustainability only exists when the nervous system feels safe. Urgency signals danger. It says, this has to work. This needs to pay off. I can't afford for this to take time. The body hears that as pressure. Under pressure, precision drops. Decision quality declines. Recovery shortens. Rest becomes guilt-ridden. And eventually, the system looks for escape. That escape often shows up as procrastination, avoidance, stillness of interest, or quitting entirely. Not because the goal was wrong, but because the pace was violent to your system. Let's reframe something important. Urgency is not commitment. Calm repetition is. Urgency wants results. Consistency builds capacity, and capacity determines how far you can go. People who last don't move faster. They move cleaner. They design rhythms they can return to, even on low-energy days. They choose actions that don't require hype. They allow progress to be quiet. This is why slowing down accelerates results. When urgency dissolves, your attention widens. Your energy stabilizes. Your decisions improve. Your effort becomes efficient. You stop overshooting. You stop correcting constantly. You stop starting over. You simply continue. Before we go further, pause here. Notice where urgency has shaped your past efforts. Where you pushed too hard. Where you rushed timing. Where you demanded proof too early. If you're willing to shift that pattern, leave a 3-word first-person affirmation wherever you're listening. Something grounding. For example, I move without rush. Let it be calm. Let it be true. Now let's continue. Consistency thrives in spaciousness. When you give yourself room to be human, room to have uneven days, room to progress without performance. This doesn't mean you lower standards. It means you remove force. Force creates friction. Friction wastes energy. Wasted energy breaks momentum. Clean systems conserve energy, and conserved energy compounds. This is where real discipline lives, not in pushing, but in returning. Returning after a missed day. Returning after doubt. Returning without drama. Urgency says, fix it now. Consistency says, I'll be back tomorrow. And tomorrow is where outcomes are built. In the next chapter, we'll explore how identity, not motivation, becomes the anchor that keeps you consistent even when emotion fluctuates. Continue listening. Chapter 4. Identity is the anchor. Most people try to stay consistent by managing behavior. They build routines. They set goals. They create plans. And when consistency breaks, they assume the problem is discipline. But discipline is rarely the issue. The real issue is identity. Behavior is fragile when it's not anchored to who you believe you are. Emotion changes. Energy fluctuates. Motivation fades. Identity remains. This is why consistency collapses for so many people. They are trying to act like someone they don't yet trust themselves to be. They say, I'll stay consistent if I feel focused. Or, I'll show up when I'm motivated. Or, I'll commit once I feel confident. But consistency doesn't come after confidence. Confidence comes from repeated identity-aligned action. Here's the shift. Instead of asking, how do I stay consistent? You ask, who am I when I don't feel like it? Identity answers that question automatically. Someone who identifies as inconsistent needs motivation. Someone who identifies as steady simply returns. No drama, no self-judgment, no negotiation. Identity removes friction. This is why wealthy, grounded, reliable people don't rely on hype. They don't wake up asking how they feel. They wake up responding as who they are. Identity collapses decision fatigue. You don't debate whether to show up. You don't analyze every fluctuation. You don't make inconsistency mean something about your worth. You act, then you move on. Most people delay identity. They say, once I prove it, then I'll believe it. But identity is not a reward. It's a choice. You don't become consistent by achieving consistency. You become consistent by behaving as someone who returns. This doesn't require perfection. It requires neutrality. A steady identity sounds like, I return when I drift. I don't dramatize off days. I keep promises small and repeatable. That's it. No speeches. No pressure. No reinvention. Notice how calm that is. Identity that requires intensity is unstable. Identity that tolerates imperfection is durable. This is why people with strong identities don't spiral when they miss a day. They don't collapse the system. They don't self-attack. They don't restart from zero. They continue. Before we go further, pause here. Ask yourself, not emotionally but honestly, who do I choose to be when momentum fades? If you're ready to anchor a new identity, leave a 3-word first-person affirmation wherever you're listening. Something simple, something repeatable. For example, I return consistently. Let it land. Now let's continue. Identity becomes real through repetition, not force. Each time you show up without needing to feel inspired, your nervous system learns something important. This is safe. This is familiar. This is who we are. Consistency stops feeling like effort. It starts feeling like orientation. You don't push yourself forward. You realign, and alignment is quieter than motivation, but it lasts longer. When identity anchors consistency, breaks don't derail you. Doubt doesn't stop you. The mood doesn't control you. You operate from baseline, not peaks. This is how consistency becomes boring. And boredom is powerful. Boring systems outlast emotional ones. You don't need a better personality. You don't need more willpower. You need a calmer self-concept. Someone who doesn't quit on themselves emotionally. Someone who doesn't interpret pauses as failure. Someone who trusts the long arc. That identity creates stability. Stability creates momentum. Momentum creates results. In the next chapter, we'll talk about rhythm. How to build consistency that works with your energy instead of against it. Continue listening. Chapter 5. Rhythm beats willpower. Consistency isn't about forcing action. It's about rhythm. Rhythm is the quiet pulse behind every reliable system. It's the natural cadence your body can follow without resistance. It doesn't spike. It doesn't demand. It simply moves steadily forward. Most people rely on willpower. They say, "I'll push through today. I just need to be disciplined. I'll hustle until I feel like I've earned it." Willpower is temporary. It is fuel that depletes. It cannot carry a long arc. Rhythm, on the other hand, doesn't require fuel. It doesn't care about mood. It doesn't rely on emotion. It creates a system your nervous system can trust. Think of rhythm like a heartbeat. It repeats without question. It doesn't stall if it's tired. It doesn't spike when it feels excited. It simply continues. And that is the magic behind sustainable consistency. Here's the key. You don't start with motivation. You start with schedule, with environment, with identity. Then you layer rhythm on top. Rhythm turns actions into habit, and habits into identity. It smooths out energy spikes. It removes urgency. It removes chaos. It removes the question, do I feel like doing this? When you find rhythm, you stop negotiating with yourself. You don't debate. You don't debate results. You don't debate effort. You just move. Before we go further, pause here. Notice where you've tried to rely on willpower in your life. Notice where it worked temporarily, then failed. Now, imagine a rhythm that continues even when motivation fades. If you're ready to mark that intention, leave a 3-word, first-person affirmation wherever you're listening. I follow my rhythm. No explanation. No performance. Just a quiet signal to yourself. Now let's continue. Rhythm also protects you from overextension. When you push without rhythm, you burn energy. When you follow rhythm, energy accumulates. Recovery is built in. Flow is built in. Progress is built in. Rhythm also protects you from overextension. When you push without rhythm, you burn energy. When you follow rhythm, energy accumulates. Recovery is built in. Flow is built in. Progress is built in. Rhythm teaches patience. It teaches timing. It teaches trust in the system. And trust in the system is what allows consistency to compound. You see, results do not come from extraordinary bursts. They come from ordinary action, repeated enough for identity to catch up. The nervous system learns through repetition. The body learns through safe, predictable patterns. And the mind learns that showing up is reliable, not heroic. This is why rhythm beats willpower. Willpower is a sprint. Rhythm is a marathon. And marathons are won by pace, not intensity. When rhythm becomes second nature, you no longer start and stop. You no longer feel guilty for missing a day. You no longer need to hype yourself. You simply return. And returning compounds faster than sporadic bursts. Notice the difference. One feels tense. The other feels calm. One relies on spikes. The other relies on alignment. Rhythm creates the invisible scaffolding for consistency. It's not about doing more. It's about doing steady. It's not about pushing harder. It's about showing up reliably. And over time, reliable action builds momentum that looks effortless, even if no one is watching. Before we finish this chapter, pause again. Notice your breath. Notice your body. Notice that you can move with rhythm, even if just internally in this moment. And if you want to anchor it, leave a 3-word first-person affirmation. I move with rhythm. No pressure, no expectation, just intention. This is your foundation. Your system now has permission to stabilize. Your nervous system now has a signal to follow. When rhythm is in place, results are inevitable. Not because you forced them, but because you stayed steady, aligned, and present. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to leverage energy instead of effort, and why small, strategic actions compound faster than constant hustle. Continue listening. Chapter 6. Leveraging energy, not effort. Most people believe results come from doing more, from effort, from pushing, from sacrifice. But effort is limited. It burns energy. It produces spikes, followed by dips. Leverage, on the other hand, multiplies results without multiplying effort. It's about using energy wisely, not fighting with it, not exhausting yourself to prove something. Here's the key. Energy is the currency of action. When you spend it wisely, small moves create massive impact. When you spend it recklessly, even big moves feel heavy and unrewarding. Leverage begins with awareness, noticing where your energy is strongest, noticing where your focus flows naturally, noticing what actions give returns without draining you. Most people ignore this. They hustle blindly. They push harder when tired. They overcomplicate simple systems. And then they wonder why consistency collapses. Leverage is not effortless. It's intelligent. It's precise. It's strategic. Think of it like this. A lever allows you to move a heavy object with less force. Your energy works the same way. If you position it correctly, you move far more than you would by brute strength. And your system doesn't break. Small, well-placed actions compound. Large, unfocused effort dissipates. Before we go further, pause here. Notice where you've been working harder than necessary. Notice where energy is leaking. Notice where effort feels expensive rather than effective. Now, take a moment and leave a 3-word, first-person affirmation wherever you're listening. I use energy wisely. No explanation. No pressure. Just a quiet anchor. Now let's continue. Leverage also comes from alignment. When your energy, identity, and environment all work together, the system multiplies itself. You don't have to do more. You do less, strategically, and the results grow exponentially. This is why wealthy, consistent people rarely appear busy. They do not burn themselves out. They choose actions that matter. They design systems that support repetition without tension. Energy is maximized when focus is clean, action is aligned with identity, effort is precise, recovery is built in. Notice how calm that feels. Notice how far you can go without force. Notice the quiet confidence of moving with leverage rather than against yourself. Small adjustments create huge differences over time. A minor shift in timing, a small change in approach, a single micro-decision made calmly instead of hurriedly. Leverage multiplies that impact across days, weeks, months, and years. It compounds silently, like interest accumulating in a bank. This is why energy management is more valuable than motivation, more reliable than discipline, more sustainable than sheer effort. Before we finish this chapter, pause again. Notice your breath. Notice your posture. Notice that you have the ability to act with less force and more intelligence. And if you want to anchor it, leave a 3-word first-person affirmation. I move with leverage. No pressure, no expectation. Just a quiet signal of how you intend to operate moving forward. Leverage creates space. Space allows consistency to flourish, and consistency produces results without collapse. In the next chapter, we'll explore identity as the ultimate multiplier. Why who you are internally determines how effectively you can leverage energy, manage rhythm, and sustain consistent action. Continue listening. Chapter 7. Identity multiplies everything. Consistency, rhythm, leverage. All of these tools are powerful, but their true strength comes from identity. Your identity is the lens through which all action flows. It determines how energy is used. It determines how rhythm is maintained. It determines whether consistency sticks. Without the right identity, effort is wasted. Motivation is fragile. Consistency collapses at the first obstacle. Identity multiplies everything because it anchors behavior at a deep level. It answers the question you often ask unconsciously. Am I the type of person who does this? Most people rely on willpower or discipline because identity isn't yet aligned. They say, I'll act until I feel like the person I want to become. But the truth is, identity comes first. Behavior without identity is temporary. Behavior with aligned identity is unstoppable. Here's how it works. Imagine two people with the same goals. One believes, I am someone who stays the course. The other believes, I'll try to stay consistent when I can. The first person acts without hesitation. The second negotiates every choice. The first person returns naturally after a pause. The second feels guilty or overwhelmed. Identity multiplies because it removes resistance. It reduces friction. It removes the need for external motivation. It transforms small actions into automatic alignment. Before we go further, pause here. Ask yourself, who do I need to be to make this effortless? Not just capable, not just skilled, but someone who shows up naturally, without force. If you're ready to anchor that identity, leave a 3-word, first-person affirmation wherever you're listening. I am consistent, simple, quiet, embodied. Not a mantra to push with, but a declaration to inhabit. Now let's continue. Identity also shapes perception. Someone who identifies as steady sees obstacles as temporary. They see opportunities that others miss. They perceive leverage instead of labor. They interpret risk differently. Identity multiplies results because it aligns nervous system, attention, and effort. It removes the unconscious sabotage that kills consistency. It transforms small strategic actions into unstoppable momentum. Think about the difference. A skill without identity is applied inconsistently. Brute mere rhythm without identity is abandoned under stress. Leverage without identity is wasted. Identity unifies all three. It's the anchor, the multiplier, the quiet engine behind every result. Before we finish this chapter, pause again. Notice how you've been identifying yourself in areas you want to improve. Notice where old identities may have been holding you back. And if you want to anchor your new multiplier identity, leave a 3-word first-person affirmation. I am unstoppable, not bravado, not force. Just presence, alignment, truth. Identity multiplies everything because once it's internalized, action no longer depends on motivation. It no longer collapses under fatigue, doubt, or distraction. It simply flows. In the next chapter, we'll explore how environment and relationships either support or sabotage identity, and how to design external conditions that naturally reinforce your consistency, rhythm, and leverage. Continue listening. Chapter 8. Environment as Identity Amplifier. Your environment is not neutral. It is always teaching, always calibrating, always shaping who you are. Every space you occupy, every person you engage with, every routine you follow is reinforcing either your identity or working against it. Most people underestimate this. They think consistency, rhythm, and leverage are internal challenges alone. But the external world is always training your nervous system, whether you realize it or not. A cluttered space signals chaos. Constant notifications train distraction. People who normalize urgency train stress. Even seemingly small routines send messages to your body about what is acceptable and what isn't. If your environment misaligns with who you want to become, your identity struggles to stabilize. Consistency collapses. Energy leaks. Momentum stalls. Conversely, when your environment aligns with your intended identity, it amplifies everything. Clean spaces create mental clarity. Intentional relationships model standards you can embody. Predictable routines stabilize the nervous system. Subtle cues. A quiet office, a supportive colleague, a morning ritual. Reinforce your presence and reliability. Here's the important insight. You don't need more discipline to overcome external chaos. You need alignment. You need to curate your inputs, spaces, people, and routines to support who you are becoming. Before we continue, pause here. Notice one environment that has been unconsciously shaping you. Notice one space, one routine, or one person that has amplified old patterns. If you're ready to take ownership, leave a 3-word, first-person affirmation wherever you're listening. I choose alignment. Simple, quiet, anchored. No explanation, no drama, just a signal to yourself. Now let's continue. Environment acts like gravity for your identity. If it's misaligned, it pulls you back. If it's aligned, it supports you. The most powerful people don't just adjust their actions. They design their environment to reinforce their identity automatically. This doesn't mean escaping your life. It means subtle upgrades that reduce friction and increase stability. A cleaner workspace. And strategic time blocks. Limiting reactive notifications. Choosing interactions that elevate, not drain. These small shifts feel quiet, even invisible, but they are potent. They allow nervous system, identity, and rhythm to synchronize. They reduce the need for willpower. They make leverage automatic. Consistency, rhythm, leverage, and identity all compound faster when the environment supports them. This is why some people seem to progress effortlessly, even when they work no harder than anyone else. Before we finish this chapter, pause again. Notice one actionable environmental shift you can make today, even minor, even subtle. And if you want to anchor it, leave a 3-word first-person affirmation. I design support. No force, no pressure. Just a quiet, steady signal to your system. When your environment amplifies your identity, consistency becomes natural. Leverage multiplies. Rhythm flows. And results follow quietly, reliably, and without collapse. In the next chapter, we'll explore how detachment strengthens presence and authority, and why emotional independence is essential for sustainable progress. Continue listening. Chapter 9. Detachment strengthens presence. Detachment is often misunderstood. People hear the word and imagine coldness, distance, or a lack of care. But true detachment is not indifference. It is sovereignty. Detachment means your emotional stability is no longer dependent on a specific outcome. You can want something clearly, deeply, without needing it to happen in order to feel whole, safe, or validated. This is subtle and it is powerful, because money, opportunity, and influence are sensitive to need. Neediness doesn't announce itself loudly. It shows up quietly, in hesitation, in overreaching, in the pressure behind a yes or no. When opportunities feel needed, they pull away, not as punishment, but as natural response. Need creates distortion. It clouds perception. It tightens timing. It compromises standards. Detachment restores clarity. A detached person does not chase. They do not withdraw. They remain present as without gripping. This is emotional sovereignty. And emotional sovereignty is magnetic. It slows the nervous system. It steadies decisions. It deepens presence. Before we continue, pause here. Notice moments where need has shaped your choices, where outcomes have felt like lifelines instead of options. If you're ready to anchor detachment, leave a 3-word, first-person affirmation wherever you're listening. I am sovereign. Simple, quiet, embodied. No overthinking. No explanation. Now let's continue. Holding desire without gripping outcomes is a trained skill. It begins by noticing where you lean forward emotionally, where you try to secure future results through tension or over-control. When you notice that lean, soften it. Return to presence. Return to your body. Return to the understanding that no single outcome defines your worth. Detachment does not make you passive. It makes you precise. It makes you optional. It gives you freedom to walk away from misaligned opportunities without fear, to wait without anxiety, to negotiate without tension. The more emotionally sovereign you become, the more options you see and the less you settle. Money, opportunity, and influence respond to this state because it signals stability, not safety as in small. Safety as in reliable. Reliable people are entrusted with larger sums, bigger opportunities, longer timelines. Magnetism is not performance. It is internal alignment. When you stop chasing outcomes, outcomes begin moving toward you. This is the quiet power of detachment. Before we finish this chapter, pause again. Notice one area of your life where need has ruled your decisions. Imagine responding with sovereignty instead. If you want to anchor it, leave a 3-word first-person affirmation. I remain grounded. No pressure, no force, just a quiet signal that your nervous system can trust. Detachment strengthens presence. Presence strengthens identity. Identity strengthens consistency, leverage, and rhythm. Everything compounds when the system is calm, and calm is far more magnetic than effort. In the next chapter, we'll explore decision-making at higher levels, how to act cleanly, decisively, and from authority, without second-guessing or internal negotiation. Continue listening. Chapter 10. Decision-making at higher levels. At higher levels of wealth, decisions feel different. Not heavier, not frantic, cleaner. Wealthy individuals are often described as decisive, but what looks like speed from the outside is actually stillness on the inside. They don't decide quickly because they're reckless. They decide cleanly because they trust their internal authority. Most people delay decisions not because they lack information. They delay because they are negotiating with themselves. They argue internally. They rehearse outcomes. They seek emotional safety through certainty that doesn't exist. This internal negotiation is exhausting and expensive. Every unresolved decision leaks energy. Wealthy people eliminate this leak by collapsing the distance between identity and choice. They don't ask, "What should I do?" They ask, "What does someone like me do in this situation?" Identity decides. The mind executes. This is why self-trust is more valuable than intelligence. When you trust yourself, you don't need to keep checking. You don't need to revisit the same choice from 5 angles. You don't need external permission to move forward. Decisive stillness replaces frantic thinking. Stillness is not hesitation. It's grounded clarity. It's the ability to pause without freezing, to feel without spiraling, to choose without forcing. Before we go further, pause here. Notice how it feels to make a choice without internal negotiation. If you're ready to anchor this authority, leave a 3-word, first-person affirmation wherever you're listening. I trust myself. Simple, quiet, embodied. No explanation, no drama. Now let's continue. Training decisive stillness begins in small moments. When a choice appears, notice the first grounded response before fear arrives. That initial response is often quiet, neutral, unemotional. Fear arrives later, louder, faster, more convincing. Higher-level decision-making learns to move before fear hijacks the process. This doesn't mean ignoring risk. It means assessing risk without self-betrayal. Wealthy decisions are rarely about avoiding loss. They are about aligning with direction. When you make choices from fear, you shrink. When you make choices from identity, you expand. Identity-based decisions are calm. They don't need justification. They don't require applause. You might not feel excited. You might not feel certain. But you feel aligned, and alignment compounds. Over time, this practice builds authority. Authority builds trust. Trust simplifies future decisions. This is how decision-making becomes easier as wealth increases, not harder. Because you stop outsourcing your authority to circumstances, opinions, or mood. You become the reference point. Before we finish this chapter, pause again. Notice one decision you've been delaying. Imagine approaching it from this identity of calm authority. If you want to anchor it, leave a 3-word first-person affirmation. I decide clearly. No pressure, no force, just a quiet signal to your nervous system. Decision-making at higher levels is not faster. It is cleaner. It is intentional. It is aligned. In the next chapter, we'll explore how your environment amplifies or sabotages your authority, and how to design external conditions that reinforce this higher level decision-making. Continue listening. Chapter 11. Environment as Authority Amplifier. Your environment is more than background. It is training. Every space you occupy, every person you interact with, every routine you follow shapes who you are becoming. Consistency, rhythm, leverage, identity, and detachment. All of these can be strengthened or weakened depending on your environment. A misaligned environment pulls energy away from your authority. It triggers old patterns. It amplifies doubt. It reduces presence. Even subtle signals, clutter, chaos, distraction, signal the nervous system that control is tenuous. Conversely, an aligned environment amplifies authority. It stabilizes identity. It reinforces rhythm. It smooths energy. It allows decisive stillness to become natural. This doesn't require dramatic change. It requires precision. Curate spaces, people, and routines that reinforce who you are. Consider these subtle shifts. A cleaner workspace that signals order and focus. Strategic blocks of time that respect energy cycles. Notifications managed to reduce reactivity. Interactions that model presence and competence. Even small adjustments compound over time. Your nervous system begins to trust itself. Your identity begins to anchor automatically. Your decisions become cleaner. Your presence becomes magnetic. Before we continue, pause here. Notice one part of your environment that has been undermining your authority. Notice one small adjustment that could reinforce it. If you're ready, leave a 3-word, first-person affirmation wherever you're listening. I create support. Simple, quiet, embodied. No pressure. No overthinking. Now let's continue. The strongest environments don't enforce behavior. They reinforce identity. They make returning to baseline effortless. They reduce internal negotiation. They allow rhythm to flow naturally. The most successful people don't just act consistently. They design conditions that make consistent, aligned action inevitable. Authority is amplified when identity is reinforced externally, energy is stabilized by surroundings, distraction is minimized, alignment is consistent. This is why environments are so critical. Without alignment, even high-level identity collapses under pressure. With alignment, even small actions produce massive compounding results. Pause for a moment. Notice one environment you can upgrade this week. Even minor, even subtle. If you want to anchor it, leave a 3-word first-person affirmation. I design alignment. No force, no stress, just a quiet internal signal. When your environment amplifies your authority, consistency, leverage, rhythm, and identity multiply naturally. Results follow without struggle. Momentum compounds quietly, reliably, and sustainably. In the next chapter, we'll explore how maturity and responsibility with wealth create freedom, and why earning capacity is inseparable from emotional and operational integrity. Continue listening. Chapter 12. Wealth as responsibility, not reward. Wealth is often misunderstood. Most people think it's a reward, a prize for effort, a destination at the end of struggle. But true wealth is a responsibility first. The more you earn, the more you are tested, before the money ever lands. It tests clarity, presence, and self-regulation. It tests your ability to hold without collapsing. It tests whether you can remain aligned when influence, opportunity, and resources increase. Responsibility with wealth is not heavy. It is stabilizing. It strengthens identity. It creates authority. Most people fail not because they lack skill, not because they lack opportunity, but because they haven't grown into the person who can reliably hold more. Before we continue, pause here. Notice one area in your life where responsibility could be practiced more consciously. If you're ready, leave a 3-word, first-person affirmation wherever you're listening. I hold responsibly. Simple, quiet, anchored. Now let's continue. Mature wealth is not about accumulation alone. It's about capacity. Capacity to lead. Capacity to steward. Capacity to act with integrity, even under pressure. The person who can hold more money, time, and influence without destabilizing themselves earns more naturally. The person who collapses under pressure limits what can arrive. This is why wealth compounds differently for different people. It is not just external, it is internal. Responsibility with wealth includes managing impulses without urgency, making clean, aligned decisions, remaining emotionally sovereign, sustaining presence under pressure. When these are in place, money no longer needs to be chased. It becomes a reflection of internal alignment, a reflection of reliability, a reflection of coherence. Before we finish this chapter, pause again. Notice how it feels to hold responsibility without tension. Imagine acting with integrity, clarity, and presence in every opportunity. If you want to anchor it, leave a 3-word first-person affirmation. I am capable. No drama, no pressure, just quiet presence. Wealth follows those who can be trusted with it, not because of hustle, not because of skill alone, but because of calm, consistent, aligned authority. From this point forward, earning is not about proving worth. It is about demonstrating reliability. It is about allowing opportunity to meet you. In the next chapter, we'll explore receiving without guilt or collapse, and how to fully inhabit abundance without destabilizing your system. Continue listening. Chapter 13. Receiving without guilt or collapse. For many people, earning money is not the hardest part. Receiving it is. This is where success quietly unravels, not through failure, but through discomfort with having more than before. When abundance arrives, it often activates unconscious patterns. Guilt, vigilance, the urge to give it away too quickly, the impulse to create chaos just to return to what feels familiar. This is not dramatic self-sabotage. It is nervous system calibration. Your body has a comfort range for pleasure, rest, and ease. When reality exceeds that range, the system looks for a way to contract. This is why some people burn out after a win, why others feel numb instead of satisfied, why ease can feel more threatening than struggle. Receiving capacity is not about deserving. It is about tolerance. Before we continue, pause here. Notice moments when receiving felt uncomfortable or stressful. If you're ready, leave a 3-word, first-person affirmation wherever you're listening. I receive fully. Simple, quiet, embodied. No overthinking. No justification. Now let's continue. Expanding your ability to receive begins with allowing pleasure without justification. Not reward-based pleasure. Not earned rest. Simple enjoyment without explanation. When your system learns that ease does not equal danger, it stops bracing. Rest becomes restorative instead of guilt-inducing. Pleasure becomes grounding instead of destabilizing. Money that doesn't land creates tension. Money that lands creates stability. Notice how you respond after a positive outcome. Do you immediately plan the next move? Do you minimize the win? Do you look for the catch? These are not flaws. They are signals, and signals can be retrained. Receiving also means releasing the need to justify abundance. You don't need to explain why you have more. You don't need to apologize for ease. You don't need to carry the emotional weight of others' expectations. Wealth does not ask for guilt. It asks for responsibility and presence. When you allow success to be simple, you become more reliable with it. Your nervous system stabilizes at a higher baseline. Your decisions stay clear. Your energy remains available. This is maturity in receiving, not dramatic gratitude, not performative humility. Quiet permission, the ability to let good things be good. Before we finish this chapter, pause again. Notice how it feels to allow abundance without collapsing. If you want to anchor it, leave a 3-word first-person affirmation. I accept abundance. No force, no guilt, just presence. Receiving fully multiplies everything else. Consistency, leverage, identity, and authority flow naturally. Momentum grows without collapse. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to integrate all these principles so you no longer chase, and results come naturally. Continue listening. Chapter 14. You no longer chase. There is a moment when effort loosens. Not because you stopped caring, but because something deeper took over. This is the moment when seeking gives way to allowing. When motion becomes quieter. When what you've been training for begins to live through you instead of in front of you. You are no longer chasing outcomes. You are inhabiting inevitability. This doesn't mean you do nothing. It means you no longer reach from absence. You act from alignment. You respond from presence. You move from who you are, not from what you hope to achieve. Earlier chapters were about clearing, stabilizing, and expanding capacity. This chapter is about integration. The point where the work stops feeling like work. You're not trying to become someone anymore. You're responding as who you already are, and that changes what responds to you. When you live from presence, money stops being the goal. It becomes a byproduct, not because you let go dramatically, but because your system is no longer organized around lack. You don't signal urgency. You don't signal proving. You don't signal grasping. You signal coherence. And coherence is magnetic. Opportunities don't feel chased down. They feel encountered. Decisions don't feel heavy. They feel obvious. Money flows not because you're pulling it toward you, but because nothing in you is pushing it away. This is what embodiment looks like in real life. Your body trusts itself. Your nervous system expects support. Your actions come from clarity, not compensation. You don't need to hustle your identity. You don't need to explain your worth. You don't need to predict every outcome. You move. Life responds. Before we go further, pause for a moment. Notice how it feels to imagine not chasing. To imagine moving through your day without proving, without rushing, without leaning forward energetically. If you can name how you want to move through life now, leave a 3-word, first-person affirmation wherever you're listening. I move naturally. Let them reflect who you are now, not who you were trying to become. Now let's continue. Living from inevitability doesn't mean certainty of details. It means certainty of self. You trust that when something is aligned, it will meet you. And when something isn't, it will fall away without drama. This trust creates efficiency. You stop overworking paths that were never yours. You stop forcing timing. You stop negotiating with your intuition. Your energy becomes clean, and clean energy travels far. Money responds to this because money follows movement. It follows clarity. It follows systems that don't leak through fear or overextension. Presence is not passive. It's precise. You notice more. You say no faster. You say yes more cleanly. You don't wait to be chosen. You don't need to announce your arrival. You're already here, and what's meant to meet you can feel that. This is the version of you who finishes things without burning out, receives without collapsing, acts without second-guessing, rests without guilt, not because you mastered a mindset, but because your body believes it's safe to be supported. This is wealth as a lived state, not numbers on a screen, not future fantasies, but a grounded sense of enoughness that allows more. From here, growth continues naturally, not endlessly upward, but outward, deeper, more refined. You'll still expand, you'll still evolve, but you won't abandon yourself to do it. Before we finish this chapter, pause again. Notice the ease, trust, and stability you can now inhabit. If you want to anchor it, leave a 3-word first-person affirmation. I trust flow. No force, no drama, just embodied presence. You don't need to chase what already knows where you are. Your work now is simple. Stay present, stay regulated, stay honest. Let life respond, and it will. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to fully become the signal, integrating identity, environment, detachment, authority, and presence so that your entire system communicates wealth effortlessly. Continue listening. Chapter 15. Becoming the Signal. There is nothing left to learn here. No technique to apply. No mindset to install. No habit to force into place. What remains is embodiment. Not something you do, something you allow to continue. Throughout this audiobook, your system has been recalibrating, not through effort, but through repeated experiences of safety, clarity, and presence. You didn't memorize ideas. You practiced being with yourself while hearing them. That matters, because wealth does not respond to strategies alone. It responds to signals. And the most reliable signal you send is who you are being when no one is watching. Becoming the signal means trusting the version of you that no longer needs to manage everything. You notice impulses without obeying them. You act without rehearsing. You rest without needing permission. This isn't detachment, it's integration. The old reflex to push, chase, or brace may still appear, but it no longer runs the system. You don't correct it. You don't shame it. You let it pass. And what remains is quiet certainty. This certainty doesn't announce itself. It doesn't rush. It doesn't convince. It simply moves. Moving forward from here doesn't require intensity. It requires alignment. You'll know what to do next, not because you figured it out, but because it feels clean in your body. Clean, yes. Clean, no. Clean waiting. This is how forcing dissolves. When you trust your recalibrated self, you stop overriding subtle signals. You stop asking, is this enough? You stop scanning for reassurance. You respond. Life responds. This is activation without urgency. Money follows this not as a reward, but as a reflection. Reflection of stability. Reflection of coherence. Reflection of someone who can hold what arrives. Wealth doesn't need you tense. It needs you available. Before we close, pause here. Notice the quality of presence you feel right now. Notice what feels more settled than when you began. If you want to mark this shift, leave a 3-word, first-person affirmation wherever you're listening. I am presence. Let it be simple. Let it be embodied. Let it be yours. Now let's finish. From this point forward, growth won't feel like self-improvement. It will feel like self-trust. You'll take action without pressure. You'll pause without fear. You'll receive without collapse. Not perfectly, but reliably. This is what it means to become the signal. You don't broadcast effort. You don't transmit urgency. You don't perform confidence. You live it, and the world adjusts. As this final chapter ends, there is nothing to hold on to, no lesson to remember, no promise to repeat. Only this. Stay present, stay regulated, stay honest. Let what follows, follow. This isn't the end of the work. It's the end of forcing, and the beginning of something quieter, stronger, and already underway. You've done the work by showing up and listening. Now let it settle in. If this content resonated with you, share it with someone who's ready to elevate their presence and wealth. Drop a comment with your 3-word affirmation, your biggest takeaway, or how you're stepping into alignment, your words might inspire someone else. And don't forget to subscribe to stay connected. More insights, guidance, and exercises are coming, all designed to help you embody consistency, calm, and authority in your life.